Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost, the one true God. Back with you with the next video in my series reading The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Without further ado, returning to The Picture of Dorian Gray as read by Lord Naren White. I don't think I am likely to marry, Harry. I am too much in love. That is one of your apophisms. I'm putting it into practice, as I do everything you say. Whom are you in love with? Said Lord Henry, looking at him with a curious smile. With an actress, said Dorian Gray, blushing. Lord Henry shrugged his shoulders. That is a rather commonplace debut, he murmured. You would not say so if you saw her, Harry. Who is she? Her name is Sybil Vane. Never heard of her. No one has. People will some day, however. She is a genius. My dear boy, no woman is a genius. Women are a decorative sex. They never have anything to say, but they say it charmingly. They represent the triumph of matter over mind, just as we men represent the triumph of mind over morals. There are only two kinds of women, the plain and the colored. The plain women are very useful. If you want to gain a reputation for respectability, you have merely to take them down to supper. The other women are very charming. They commit one mistake, however. They paint in order to try to look young. Our grandmothers paint in order to try to talk brilliantly. Rogue and a spirit used to go together. That has all gone out now. As long as a woman can look 10 years younger than her own daughter, she is perfectly satisfied. As for a conversation, there are only 5 women in London worth talking to, and 2 of these can't be admitted into decent society. However, tell me about your genius. How long have you known her? About 3 weeks. Not so much. About 2 weeks and 2 days. How did you come across her? I will tell you, Harry, but you mustn't be unsympathetic about it. After all, it never would have happened if I had not met you. You filled me with a wild desire to know everything about life. For days after I met you, something seemed to throb in my veins as I lounged in the park or strolled down Piccadilly. I used to look at everyone who passed me and wonder with a mad curiosity what sort of lives they led. Some of them fascinated me. Others filled me with terror. There was an exquisite poison in the air. I had a passion for sensations. One evening, about 7 o'clock, I determined to go out in search of some adventure. I felt that this grey, monstrous London of ours, with its myriads of people, its splendid sinners, and its sordid sins, as you once said, must have something in store for me. I fancied 1,000 things. The mere danger gave me a sense of delight. I remembered what you had said to me on that wonderful night when we first dined together, about the search for beauty being the poisonous secret of life. I don't know what I expected, but I went out and wandered eastward, soon losing my way in a labyrinth of grimy streets and black, grassless squares. About 8:30 I passed by a little third-rate theatre with great flaring gas jets and gaudy playbills. A hideous Jew in the most amazing waistcoat I ever beheld in my life was standing at the entrance smoking a vile cigar. He had greasy ringlets, and an enormous diamond blazed in the center of his soiled shirt. "Have a box, my lord," he said when he saw me, and he took off his hat with an act of gorgeous servility. There was something about him, Harry, that amused me. He was such a monster. You will laugh at me, I know, but I really went in and paid a whole guinea for the stage box. To the present day, I can't make out why I did so, and yet if I hadn't, my dear Harry, if I hadn't, I would have missed the greatest romance of my life. I see you are laughing. It is horrid of you. I am not laughing, Dorian. At least I am not laughing at you. But you should not say the greatest romance of your life. You should say the first romance of your life. You will always be loved. You will always be in love with love. There are exquisite things in store for you. This is merely the beginning. Do you think my nature so shallow? Cried Dorian Gray angrily. No, I think your nature so deep. How do you mean? My dear boy, people who only love once in their lives are really shallow people. What they call their loyalty and their fidelity, I call their lethargy of custom or the lack of imagination. Faithlessness is to the emotional life what consistency is to the intellectual life. simply a confession of failure. But I don't want to interrupt you. Go on with your story. Well, I found myself seated in a horrid little private box with a vulgar drop scene staring me in the face. I looked out behind the curtain and surveyed the house. It was a tawdry affair, all cupids and cornucopias, like a third-rate wedding cake. The gallery and pit were fairly full, but the 2 rows of dingy stalls were quite empty, and there was hardly a person in what I suppose they called the dress circle. Women went on with oranges and ginger beer, and there was a terrible consumption of nuts going on. It must have been like it must have been just like the palmy days of the British drama. Just like, I should fancy, and very horrid. I began to wonder what on earth I should do, when I caught a sight of the play bill. What do you think the play was, Harry? I should think The Idiot Boy or Dumb the Innocent. Our fathers used to like that sort of piece, I believe. The longer I live, Dorian, the more keenly I feel that whatever was good enough for our fathers is not good enough for us. In art, as in politics, les grands Perez ont toujours tort. This play was good enough for us, Harry. It was Romeo and Juliet. I must admit, I was rather annoyed at the idea of seeing Shakespeare done in such a wretched hole of a place. Still, I felt interested in a sort of way. At any rate, I determined to wait for the first act. There was a dreadful orchestra, presided over by a young Jew, who sat at a cracked piano that nearly drove me away. But at last the drop scene was drawn up, and the play began. Romeo was a stout, elderly gentleman with corked eyebrows in a husky tragedy voice, and a figure like a beer barrel. Mercutio was almost as bad. He was played by the low comedian, who had introduced gags of his own and was on most familiar terms with the pit. They were as grotesque as the scenery, and that looked as if it had come out of a pantomime of 50 years ago. But Juliet, Harry imagined a girl, hardly 17 years of age, with a little flower-like face, a small Greek head with plaited coils of dark brown hair, eyes that were violet wells of passion, lips that were the wells of passion, lips that were like the petals of a rose. She was the loveliest thing I had ever seen in my life. You said to me that once that pathos left you unmoved, but that beauty, mere beauty, could fill your eyes with tears. I tell you, Harry, I could hardly see this girl for the mist of tears that came across me. And her voice, I never heard such a voice. It was very low at first, with deep, mellow notes that seemed to fall singly upon one's ear. Then it became a little louder, and sounded like a flute or a distant hautboy. It's spelled Hautbois. In the garden scene, it all had, let me try one more time, hautboy. I think that's right, hautboy, or a distant hautboy. In the garden scene, it had all the tremulous ecstasy that one hears just before dawn when nightingales are singing. There were moments later on when it had the wild passion of violins. You know how a voice can stir one. Your voice and the voice of Sybil Bain are 2 things I shall never forget. When I close my eyes, I hear them, and each of them says something different. I don't know which to follow. Why should I not love her? Harry, I do love her. She is everything to me in life. Night after night I go to see her play. One evening she is Rosalind, and the next evening she is Imogen. I have seen her die in the gloom of an Italian tomb, sucking the poison from her lover's lips. I have seen her wandering through the forest of Arden, disguised as a pretty boy in hose and doublet and dainty cap. She has been mad, and has come into the presence of a guilty king, and given him rue to wear, and bitter herbs to taste of. She has been innocent, and the black hands of jealousy have crushed her reed-like throat. I have seen her in every age and in every costume. Ordinary women never appeal to one's imagination. They are limited to their century. No glamour ever transfigures me. One knows their minds as easily as one knows their bonnets. One can always find them. There is no mystery in one of them. They ride in the park in the morning and chatter at tea parties in the afternoon. They have their stereotyped smile and their fashionable manner. They are quite obvious, but an actress. How different an actress is. Why didn't you tell me that the only thing worth loving is an actress? We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe as it greatly helps the channel. Light be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.